I'm just going to record it. And that last time I just reviewed it myself so I could do a better summary. So if you guys don't mind, I appreciate that. Okay, so let me pull up the agenda. I put everything in an Excel spreadsheet just so I wouldn't have to flip around to a million documents here, you know. And so yeah, you should be able to see it. I can see it on the device I'm monitoring. So what I'm going to do is take you through the summary of the table of contents suggestions. So a few people submitted stuff. We had the stuff we discussed last time. We all did a little AIing of it. So there may be some things in it that you're going to look at and say, they're not really applicable to White Plains or they have a different term. But I thought it was useful. We may as well get as many brains in this, including the virtual brains, as we can. So let me show it to you. And I've laid it out in a particular way because the second thing we're going to talk about is the concept of low hanging fruit. So here's basically what it is, and I can zoom in on it. And I had already sent it to you, but I just kind of laid it out like in sections. Okay. I'm probably going too fast. Tell me when you're ready to have me move. And can you see it? Is it big enough? Because I can make it bigger. Questions, thoughts, comments, anything?
I kind of like how it looks on this chart like this, opposed to like the standard table of contents. I feel like it's very pleasing and easy to reference.
Well, I wasn't really planning to do a table of contents, but we could do that. Sure, we could do that. And I think when we do the final document, it will be hyperlinked. So we can probably lay it out any way we want, you know? Um, One thing I want to say, it's not critical that we make a final decision on the table of contents. That's not the purpose of this. It's to just begin to start the work. So as we proceed, if more things pop up that we realize we want to include, we can always add them. It's not a limitation. Okay. So unless you can see anything here you think is completely, doesn't seem to be relevant. I think we'll stick with this for the time being and see how it goes. Everybody okay with that? Okay, so I wanna talk about this concept of low-hanging fruit, and what that really means. So my approach to a lot of work is let's do the easy parts first. Some of the things that are going to be in this manual are going to involve conversations that involve policies and procedures that may not be clear right now. So it's no secret, and many of you who will attend the office managers meeting, which is on the 12th, will hear from Noah that we're working through some of the questions that were asked at the meeting. For example, questions about increments when somebody takes, is going to be out, what's the increment? Can they take an hour, et cetera. And also some of the questions that came up one of the questions that came up involving teachers who are doing extra duties and how we actually record that and a whole bunch of other stuff related. So that stuff is going to be worked on, and it's in process. And we're hoping that we'll have all the answers to these questions by the start of the school year, certainly by September. Okay. But there's other things on here that we know, they just exist. And if it's something easy to do, I think we should start with that. Okay. That's what I mean by low hanging fruit. Also, although we don't have a lot of people here today, we have a few. Altogether, we have 18 people. That is too large to work as a group of the whole, nor is it practical. So what I wanted to do today, I think would be a good takeaway from today is if we could identify three or four of these things that we think are easy to do. They largely involve things that already exist that just have to be assembled and organized. Let's pick those and then let's set up smaller subcommittees to work on them. So the low-hanging fruit approach, I should go back to my agenda also, because the other part of that is the jigsaw approach. So the jigsaw is when we divide up. But jigsaw is also jigsaw and collegial model, which means if you have a small subset that is working on stuff, they're going to assemble it, but it's not a finished product until the whole group gets a chance to look at it. So basically, you're kind of doing behind the scenes work, and then when we have a meeting, and I think a month is a reasonable amount of time to work on some of this stuff. If it takes longer, it takes longer. But then you would bring it back to the group as a whole, and everybody would, or just send it to people, and everybody would review it and make suggestions. Okay? Any questions on that? Does that make sense? That seemed like a reasonable approach. Okay. So what I'd like to do today is identify the low-hanging fruit, the first step, low-hanging fruit. And so I'm going to go back to looking at this table of contents, and I want you to give me suggestions. What do you think would be good low-hanging fruit? And I have a couple of thoughts, but I don't want to over control this process. So I'll give you mine after.
Jim, you could just make it wider. 14 and 15 is cut off.
Yeah, there you go. I just want you to be able to see it. And like that you can read it, but you can probably zoom in on your end on your computer too. So,
Jeff, this is Carrie. So, um, I would recommend starting with the daily office operations, right? Because that's what we're in the midst of that right now, opening and closing. It's not just the day to day, but we're in the process of closing out a school year
okay.
and starting the process of opening up a school year. So, for here at Eastview, number 3 would make the most sense.
Okay.
Um, but I'd also like to just throw this back out there. Um, I just think between elementary, middle school, and high school, the procedures are all going to be different. Like everything on here is going to be very different. There may be some things that are protocol that we have to follow, but other things I think it's just really going to be based on whether you're in elementary, middle school, or high school. So is the manual going to be that big that it's going to be like if you work in the in the middle school, this is how we do the procedures. In elementary, this is how we open and close. Like I think this is something we really need to think about. I don't think it's so cut and dry that everybody open and closes the same way because each school or each grade level is just different.
Well, I'm going to add even more complication to that since you
Mhm.
brought it up. We may also have variations between schools because of, you know, call it principal's discretion about how processes work. At the end of
Yeah,
the day, the purpose of the manual is for somebody who's in any one of those schools who's coming in to have what they need. So
perfect.
in a lot of these areas, yes, the answer is there's probably going to have to be, and it may have to be distinguished, would be in the same section. But if there are things that are universal for middle school and high school, yeah, we'll have to have a section that says in the middle school and high school, we do it this way. And at
Okay.
the end of the day, if your particular, school, elementary school has a couple of additional things we'll decide whether we want to add it to the main manual or you just want to have an addendum that you keep at your building. You
Okay,
know, I mean, I
yeah,
think that would be the answer. I think
okay,
that's a problem to worry about down the road. What I would
okay,
recommend is let's start with commonality,
yeah,
things that are common, and then we can always decide how to divide it up. Because it may just be a question of in a narrative, it's the same broad narrative, and then it'll say in the middle school and high school, it's done this way, and in the elementary, it's done that way.
that's
In
fair. I
other
just wanted,
cases,
yeah,
no, 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 I totally agree with you.
yeah.
In other cases, we may need to really separate it out because it's so distinctively different.
Okay, that's fine. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that because again, there are certain things that I know that we have to do universally across the board,
Hmm.
but there were just other things that are just very different. So in my opinion, I think we start with the daily operations.
Okay.
That's what we do every day, right? I don't know if it makes sense to even just go in order, but that's my suggestion.
I think I'm just hearing them, and that's fine. I have a couple of other thoughts. I hadn't thought of that one, but I have some other thoughts. But let me see it from other people what you think. Anybody?
Um, I I think that maybe a commonality for all the schools would be the introduction section,
Hmm.
which is the purpose of the manual, the district mission, the values, organizational overview. I mean, that should be a common. Um, but and maybe maybe the staff support and human resources processes.
Which one?
Um,
What
the
number?
number 5.
Okay.
Okay, that could
I'm gonna
be
say no on that one.
no.
Only because that's the one that we're trying to work through all the details for.
Oh, well, okay.
So I think it's an important one,
Version of and
but
coordination.
let's leave that be because a lot of that. I had a meeting with Noah yesterday, and he was very clear. If we work on stuff, we'll hand it to you. You don't have to write it. It may get written with me
Oh,
working with them. But I don't want to, if we're in the process of trying to clean this up or clarify it,
mm-hmm.
I would say that's one that's not a low-hanging fruit. Okay. Let me address the first one. Okay. So I've been working on an employee handbook. It's not secret, but I've been working on it. I just haven't shared it with anyone. A lot of the things that you have listed here are in this handbook that I've been working on. So I have put a copy of those sections in our shared folder, okay, which I shared with all of you. So if you want to, so I think having one of the groups work on that would be good, but they also don't have to work from scratch. Because I described the district, I and described all the schools and the levels. You may spot mistakes I made, but the point is a lot of that, some of that's been done. I didn't include key building contacts, but we could fill that in. So you wouldn't have to start from scratch. That group. I have stuff for you. The other one I have stuff for you for is the communication stuff because Noah did a packet on communication and email etiquette, which I took from him and included in the employee handbook. So I also put that in the excerpt. So those two just may need to be cleaned up. Do you know what I mean? Or you'll add your own spin. I didn't really describe the role of the office manager because it just wasn't appropriate to an employee handbook. So there is some work to be done in that area, but I don't think you have to start from scratch. Okay. But that would certainly be a good one. So we got two. Let's see if we can. Can I give you my recommendation at this point? But so I'd say let's work on forms and templates. We have a lot of forms that exist. It's a lot of this may be an assembly job if some of the forms need to be fixed, and we say, need to be updated, but a lot of them just exist. And just having them in one good place, to me, that seems like, a low-hanging fruit. Okay? But I'm gonna defer to you folks. Okay? What do you think? Anything else? Eventually we'll get to all of it. It's just a question of where do we want to start. Okay. Anyone else? A thought? Okay. All right. Going on to our next step in this. So we have identified, and you guys are my check. So we said we're going to do daily operations.
Mhm.
The other one was, gee, I'm losing it today. You got to help me out. This is a group effort. Well, I suggested one of them being forms. So,
The introduction, I believe.
oh, that's right. Okay. Right. Uh, so I think that's a good start. What do you think? So we have to decide who wants to be involved with that. I can reach out. I can ask those of you who are here what you'd like to be. I only want to ask you to be involved with one of them. I don't want to overwhelm you, you know? And then I can reach out to the wider group and see if people are interested and give them the option. So anybody want to volunteer for one of these three?
Jeff, I'm happy to work on Eastview's opening and closing procedures since I recommended that. I'm okay with working on that, but also, um, like the office forms, what kind of office forms are we talking about? Because there's a whole lot of different types of things.
Yeah, well, my thinking was, I mean, my guess is there are more forms than I'm aware of. But here's an example of things that I would think of. A docking form,
Hmm.
employee transfer form. Um, I don't know. I guess you probably have a million forms you have to fill out. I don't think we're talking about, the onboarding stuff because that's HR specific. Forms that you have to complete. So probably a lot of them are related to people taking a personal day or stuff like that. And there may be other things. But we really don't have to decide what all the forms are, just that, that'll kind of come as part of the conversation. Yeah. All right. So so I don't forget to do it. I'm gonna put you in. So you got to help me out here because I'm seeing your thing there. Let's see if I can.
Yeah, it's under carry dad Lyra. Right there, Lyra. Up two.
There we go. Okay. All right. Anybody else wants to take a spot?
Jeff, I can help with the forms.
Who said that?
I'm
Annunziata?
sorry, it's an Annunziata, yes.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Okay. Anybody else?
No, forms, Jeff.
Oh, forms. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Ooh, I messed you up. Okay, hold on. At least I know where you are on the.
So when you say forms, like we'll do like whoever's on the committee, they'll share their forms, I'll share mine, and we'll kind of keep it
Correct.
all in one place.
Correct.
All right.
And Noah even asked me a question about that. So after we finish, picking, I'll talk to you about my idea of what I think that should look
Okay.
like. Okay. Anyone else?
I'll do
What-
operations or introductions, either one.
Take a pick. Which one do you want to do?
I'll do
Colin?
introductions.
Okay. All right.
Would do daily operations.
And who's that?
Kelly Massover.
Okay.
Right under Tina. Yeah.
Okay. They're searchable now in Excel. You can add drop downs. So, which is new. Yeah. Anybody else who is here who wants to?
I was going to say forms, but Annunziata's doing forms, so I feel like we're being redundant, but
No, not
I'll
necessarily.
go, I don't, I'll do introductions if I,
Oh.
yeah, or forms, or project. I don't care.
Well, projects is that's just a blank one.
Okay.
Because we're only
So
going to do
forms is,
three.
introduction is good. Yeah.
Okay. Do we miss anybody? Anybody else want to volunteer?
Mm.
How about Maggie? You.
You can put me wherever makes sense. I mean, daily operations, not really my forte.
No,
I'm not
that
going to
would.
really know much to speak to.
Yeah,
Forms,
that would
same
make
thing.
sense.
I
That
mean,
would
I
make
don't
sense.
know. Introductions, probably of the three, that might be the only category that kind of makes sense for me.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go. Up
All right.
there. Oh,
Where?
no, three more.
There
There
we
you
go.
go.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Last chance. Okay. Yeah. So I guess are we done with that part? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. So obviously, I'd like to have at least three people on each group. But once again, we have a larger group that I can reach out to. So what I'll do is I'll share what we have and we'll go from there. All right. Now I have to figure out how to stop sharing. I think I gotta take it out and then there we go. I think this has to do with the view I have. That's it. All right. So we're good with that. All right. And then what I would say is just so I okay. So first let me answer the question about forms. So I've done a lot of manuals and Noah asked me this question yesterday as well. So I really like to have an image of the form in the manual. And you can do that. We didn't really even talk about this, so I would like the manual to be in Word. You can put PDFs into Word, but if we do the manual in PDF, it's a nightmare if we need to edit it. If we do it in Word, it's easy, you know? And so what that means is if there are things that are not part of the Word document, like a form, you know, or a screen capture, we put that in. It can take PDFs, it converts them to a picture, but they're an image. The problem is that's not enough if somebody needs to get the form. So normally what we'll do is we'll have an image of the form, sometimes blank, sometimes filled out. If we want to give, we want to annotate it so somebody knows how to do it, filled out. And then underneath that will be a link to where they can actually access the form. And when this is all done, I will talk to Noah. We will have a place to put all of those. All the existing forms will have a home in SharePoint, you know. And I even recommend doing this twice, meaning that when we have our form section or when we're even doing some of this stuff, it may make more sense to have a form here or there in with the description. If we're describing how to do something, you want to have the form next to it. But then also to have a form section at the end that lists them in alphabetical order. So if you need to get your hands on one and the most updated one, you can just go and click that link and the form will be there. And for the most part, I'm hoping they'll be fillable. They'll be fillable forms, so they're easy to do. That's kind of how I envision the form section looking. Okay. Questions on that? Does that make sense? And then we'll go from there. So what I would like to do is, and I want to hear from everybody, once I get, a kind of a picture of who's available on each group, I'd like to meet with you the first time and get you going. And then at that point, you can decide whether me hovering is a pain in the butt and you don't want it, or if you want me to continue. You know what I mean? But in some cases, that may not be necessary. But I think I want to offer to guide you in the beginning. Okay. So what I'll do is reach out to everybody, find out when you're available, and then we'll schedule a separate Zoom just for each one of the groups. And like I said, if you can just tell me, leave us alone, Jeff. We think we're good to go. And then I'd say it is a crazy time of year, so maybe we'll circle back with, doesn't have to be 100% complete, with wherever you think you're close, by the end of July. Does that seem reasonable? Okay. And then, that'll be one of our meetings. We'll just have a meeting and each one of the groups will just share what it has, what you have already and get everybody else's feedback. And if it's done, we'll just mark it as done and, we'll move on to something else. Okay. But I like when we work on projects like this, people feel much better if they can say, we put a section to bed, it's done. We can focus on something else. And I think that's an approach that tends to get us there. Okay. And as I said, if there's more of the technical side, like questions about ASOP and timepiece, it may very well be that we're just going to task that out to Noah to give it to us, you know? And the same thing with the payroll stuff. If there are payroll procedures you want included in here, you'll just work on them as a payroll department and we'll just add it in. We don't have to have a committee. We don't have to have a committee that doesn't involve you for that. You know what I mean? You can just do that. Okay? The same thing with food service. I know Barbara also mentioned that she wanted to work on a section. She's not here today. She's got a wedding, but she wanted to work on a section that deals with F&O related issues. So I'd like to see a couple of central office operations folks involved with her just to help her so she doesn't have to do the whole thing herself. And that'll probably be the fourth project, but I don't want to do that until I talk to her, etc. All right, so we're good?
Je- Jeff,
Go
I
ahead.
just had one question.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm not sure if that's in your table of contents, but where would payroll fall into your table of
Well, let's
contents
look,
items?
and if it doesn't, we'll add it. Okay. Oh, let's see. If it isn't there already, we could argue
Mhm.
it could go under financial since it's part of the
Mm.
department, and we'll just add one more line,
Mhm.
that says payroll
Financial.
related stuff. The thing is, I think you're going to
Financial.
end up in here in a lot of different places anyway. For example, when we do the stuff on ASOP and timepiece, we're going to have to talk about the payroll connection, you know. Um,
I do think that it is part of financial, but payroll is very specific.
you want a separate payroll
Uh,
section? I can add a 17. It's no
I,
problem. Yeah.
I don't know. Hakeem, what do you think? Are you there?
If you, Jeff, if you could just scroll below, because there was something where there was a line that had payroll with HR. Oh, in
HR
line 5,
processes, staff support,
where it had timekeeping and payroll
and
support.
payroll
Maybe we can
support.
add something else
Yeah.
in there for payroll related.
Maybe we can
Okay.
do, yeah,
Yeah, and so you can
because,
expand on that, whatever you think.
yeah, because there are certain deadlines and calendars that we rely heavily for the schools to adhere
Mhm.
to, deadlines. And yeah, so we definitely want to focus on that for certain things.
So it's interesting. Under now, the way it's described, it seems to be a different item, but there is an issue of what it means to have a master calendar of deadlines that everybody has. And there is a tendency now to have each department produce its own calendar. And there could be some arguments that maybe we ought to merge those. Do you know what I mean? For example, you have a calendar. Obviously, the one that's the biggest driver always is the payroll calendar. That you know that. But we also there's also an accounts payable calendar for when
Right,
things have to be in.
right.
And there may be also be deadlines for state reporting.
Hmm.
So we may really want to look at whether or not we want to have,
A
create some
separate
sort of
item.
a
Right,
master calendar as
right.
another item, so this way it's listed. Oh, I've seen it done a number of different ways, but one of the ways that's kind of cool is to have a month by month calendar, and on it, it has all the dates when things have to be done. So
Right.
you pull up September and it has September, it'll have on this date, you have to get this in, and this date, you have to get this in. And I just think it's easier and I'm not an office manager, but if I'm new to the job and I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anything, if I can look at a main calendar for September and see, oh, on this date I have to have this in, I have to have that in. I think that's helpful. That doesn't mean that you won't continue to promulgate your other calendars. You'll continue to have your payroll calendar, it's just it will populate from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
One thing I want to say again, and I know Maria and all Annunziata and Hakeem, you're all familiar with this because we had this very conversation about the business office manual. I said you have to look at this manual from as the main customer for it is somebody who's relatively new to the job and is trying to figure out what's going on and not to miss anything. And so sometimes the best way, especially even on the operations, is to actually write stuff as you're doing it. Because that's the best way to memorialize it, as far as step by step. So, anybody else have any questions? And if you have a different view on where you think this manual should go, it doesn't have to be my vision. But, that's where I think it's really important for us. I think for many of you that are experienced, you know where everything is, you know where to find stuff. The manual's nice, but it's not critical. It's in your head, you know. It might be convenient if it's an electronic manual to be able to put your hands on a form quicker. But at the end of the day, who's this most important for? Somebody who's new, relatively new, who's got a lot to deal with, a lot to know. Yeah.
So Jeff, I'd like to add on to what Maria was saying is,
Mhm.
um, for me personally, selfishly, I'm sorry, but running the building,
Yeah.
one big calendar with a lot of different information on it can get a little confusing because you don't know what you're looking for. But I do kind of like the idea of under staff support and human resource processes is to have a payroll, just to have a separate payroll tab there, because I work off of that very calendar that Maria talks about, which gives us the deadlines of when we have to submit the make sure that timepiece is completed in time and make sure
Mhm.
that we submit the teacher period coverages in time.
Mhm.
So if I'm new to this role and I know that that's part of my job, and I look at one big calendar with all of these deadlines, it's going to feel really overwhelming and I'm not going to really know what I'm looking at. But if it is dissected, even if there's various calendars under each tab, we will know that it pertains to that particular topic. So if I'm doing a search in the document, whether it's a PDF or Word, and I go in there, it's like, due dates for payroll or whatever it is,
Right,
I
you'll
know
be
that
able
it's
to
going to
find
take me
it.
there directly versus looking at one ginormous calendar.
Yeah.
Because again, we have so many schools with different deadlines, and even though payroll is payroll, I think it deserves its own
Well, I'm
little
gonna I'm
square.
gonna I'm gonna give you a middle ground on this. I don't think you have to choose one or the other.
Mm,
I think there are benefits in having the larger visual view of a month.
mm-hmm,
But at some point, you're going to need to wade into the details. So there's no suggestion that if we had a calendar that said this is due on this date and it's just a master, it's like by month, that we
mm-hmm,
wouldn't also have individual calendars. And I would assume that what people are going to do, especially for the stuff where it's like every 2 weeks, by monthly, they're going to print a copy and put it up,
yes, of
pretty
course.
much, that's what you're going to do, you know. Or in their own individual Outlook calendar, they're going to mark those off. You know what I mean? So I would ask you to have an open mind about maybe both are good. You know,
I
but
think that's a great idea. Yeah, I mean, it's
yeah.
fine to have one big overview. But we do need it to be kind of dissected so that when you're learning your role, then you know exactly where to go. So I mean,
Mhm.
I do like both options. We do have both options here in Eastview,
Mhm.
but as somebody who's starting brand new, if I were to look
Well,
at a calendar like that, I
I
think I'd want to
I
build.
think we're going to end up having a payroll section.
Yeah.
And it's going to just go because payroll's too critical. And it's going to, in that payroll section, it's going to have some descriptor of what you're expected to do. And then it's going to have a link, either probably a visual copy of the calendar because it's only a one pager, and then
Sure.
a link to it. So if you want to print it, you can print a good, good copy. And then it's really up to, this is the part that's really important. Once we get a manual like this, making sure that it gets updated annually, and each
Mhm.
department taking responsibility for switching it out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So we
Yes.
don't have a calendar from 6 years ago, you know. For things like so I don't want a sample calendar. I want this more up to date.
Yeah.
Uh
Agreed.
yeah,
Mhm.
and we even talked about at least having one person in HR take some responsibility for checking that everything that is gets particularly for them gets comes out of their end is all the most up-to-date forms and everything you know and that's another reason why the manual never get printed, because if we make an update in a form we'd have to reprint the whole thing. If it's virtual and it's shared, if we have a revision in a form it'll just get changed in real time. you know
Mhm.
any other questions?
I do have a question.
Sure.
Like, once the final product is final, who
If it's
actually, who's in charge of the master? Like, so if anything needs to be updated, is it someone from HR that's going to be,
I would think probably because it is, because of the connection between HR and the relationship with you folks. I realize there's an overlap with payroll, but I'm going to ask one person to take sort of an oversight role. That doesn't mean they're going to do all of it. It means they're going to be the one that says, I'm doing my semi-annual review of the office manager's manual, and we're getting ready for the beginning of next year. Is the update payroll calendar ready? And then we can decide whether you'll just send it to them or whether you'll update it.
okay,
You know what I
right.
mean?
Yes,
But I do think it's important to have a person who takes responsibility for reviewing.
right.
And I think that person can't be an individual building. It has to be someone centrally. Now, as far as your sections, if you have a section for your building, because you have some things that you do uniquely in your building, you're going to have to be responsible for keeping that up to date. You know what I mean? But as far as any of the stuff that's district wide, a change in a form, a change in payroll calendar, accounts payable calendar, somebody will have to be responsible for that. And logically, I think that belongs in HR. Who in HR, I'm not saying that's not up to me, really, but yeah. And yes, that is a critical thing. I can't tell you how many manuals I know. They sit on shelves and they have so much dust on them, they're useless. This has to be up to date, or it's not really going to be useful for you. So we have 15 minutes. Do you really want to do a breakout today, or should we just skip it and uh, what do you think? Want to take 10 minutes and meet by unit, by groups? I work for you guys. You got to talk to me.
I'm okay with skipping it this time around since we don't
I
have
was
a
just
large
about to
group.
say that.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I know
We
Karen.
might
you
have a
all
I
small
just
group
unmuted
too.
overlap.
myself.
Yeah, people don't seem so engaged today. We do a small group too, so maybe today is not the day.
Yeah, yeah, and we're actually going to end up dividing up anyway by these projects. So whether we want to, at this point, all the time break out by middle school and elementary, we may not need to do that, you know. And now as I said, I'm thinking for the projects end of July for a first draft. Does that seem reasonable? So we have another meeting, I believe it's on the 7th. I have to look at my calendar again, but I believe we have a circle back on the 7th. So hopefully we'll get we may get different people, but you know, we'll get more people. I will reach out to everybody and let them know, you know, I'll do a summary of this meeting. And I'll ask people to give me a choice. I may even do a Google form, you know, let them pick. Okay. And then once I get, you know, who's in each group, I'll reach out to you in each group individually and just ask you what works as far as your calendar. And if you want to wait until, I don't know, as we get to the last couple of weeks of school, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe we wait until after the 1st of July. Does that seem reasonable? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we still
So,
have to audit stuff, so
yeah,
we're going to be
there's
very busy.
never a good time. Yeah. And in the meantime, you all have access to the shared folder, right? That I take a look in there because I did put in stuff from the employee manual. And I'll put this in, you know, the list of who volunteered for the groups in as well. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll also
Okay.
put the summary that you saw that you like so much, Maggie. You think we should. So that'll all be in there. So take a look at what's there. Okay. And I'll be back to you when we get, you know, kind of a wider participation. Thank you all for your time today. I thought this was a productive meeting and you know, we're moving forward. Okay? All
Yeah.
right. And I'll see all of you many of you on the 12th when we do the you know, the in-person meeting with the office managers and we have lots of updates on where we are with stuff. Okay? All right.
Thanks,
Have a
Jeff.
terrific day. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
All
Thank
right,
you.
everyone.
Have a
Take care.
great day. Bye bye.